said talk to me, damn it, or else I'm gonna throw you in the fire!
You stupid bitch! You filthy... Flyover state of fear.
Welcome to 2025. What's up, guys? Hi, Brian. How are you?
Ooh, we made it, man. Another year.
Yeah, another year. We did it.
A random date that we decided means it's a new year.
It's I don't know, something with Jesus.
Yeah, I don't know how they figured it out. You know, calendars.
I like also right now we're also deciding for our own timeline. We're like a snow day movie. We just did a Christmas special. It's a snow day movie.
That's right. Oh yeah, absolutely. I love this time of year. I've got The Shining and Werewolves Within, A Simple Plan. I love to get in a snow movie. There's just so many good ones.
Also, I mean, like, how much are you spending? I know myself, like on a couch under a blanket. I know I'm spending a lot of time on a couch under a blanket.
As much as possible, yeah, absolutely.
Because especially like we got our first heating bill from what we thought we should keep the house out, and now we're like, oh no.
Gotta crank that down, baby, and put on a sweater.
We can bring that down a little bit. True story.
Turn that down and get myself a nice fluffy robe.
Speaking of that, I'm actually gonna check what it's at right now.
Hell yeah.
But no, so we're talking Misery today, but in the meantime, Brian, what have you been watching? How you been?
Man, okay, I got a couple of good ones, I think. So, first one, this is a recommendation I can give to anyone. This is it was a Hungarian movie called Postmortem. Came out in 2020. It was actually Hungary's official entry for the Academy Awards that year. Somebody should have told them that they don't give Academy Awards to genre pictures. I guess sometimes they do to foreign films though, because I remember didn't some of Guillermo del Toro's early stuff get nominated or something?
I mean, Pan's Labyrinth,
Chronos, or Devil's Backbone, or one of those maybe. I don't know. I guess Pan's Labyrinth technically, but either way, this was there. It just happened to be on the poster that it said that, so I thought I'd make mention of it. But this was a pretty solid ghost story, which I think is kind of hard to pull off sometimes because I don't find ghosts to be particularly scary. But this one had a cool, kind of gimmick to it and everything. And no spoilers, obviously, but I thought it was pretty effective. You can find it on Shudder, so you want to check that out.
How'd you find it?
I watched it on Shudder.
Mm-hmm. Very cool.
Now, the other one is kind of a movie that I feel like I can't actually recommend to anybody. Okay, it's funny that I mention it on this episode about Misery, because that's what this movie is Misery. It's a Spanish language movie called The Coffee Table. It was a recommendation, well, maybe not even a recommendation, but I heard it mentioned in a video. I think the Red Letter Media was talking about their year end, one of their year end wrap ups. So, and I don't want to give anything away, but it would be like an incredible trigger warning for literally almost anyone, because the inciting incident in this movie is like a horrific accident, like an unfathomably horrific accident, and then the rest of the movie is kind of this exercise in horror and tension and waiting for this kind of secret and horrific event to be revealed, and what are the consequences going to be of it and everything. And it was incredibly intense, and again,
it says it's a comedy.
It's definitely not a comedy.
It says it's a black. You Google it, Spanish black comedy.
It has. I mean, I could see where it has elements of that in it, but no, it's not that at all. It's not a comedy. Do not go in thinking it's a comedy. Like I said, for me, it was one of those you're like, oh man, you forget that horror can be different things. Horror, you know what I mean? And this was more harrowing to me than any kind of gore porn or anything like this. This definitely was. Well, yeah, I mean,
those ones
I
that
could see where
usually
you
are
would
to
see
get
it as a
you.
comedy. I guess maybe certain people could come at it that way, but there's a certain sect of people who have reached a certain part of their life who will never be able to look at it that way. So it's
Gotcha.
it's it was very intense, and one of those things that like you can't even really talk to like the normies in your life about something like this. Like
I was just
I couldn't
talking.
even begin to explain what this movie was about to people. I don't like I said, I'm not even gonna reveal it here because I feel like it's one of those things that's like you know, you should just walk into it and you should either be brave enough to go or not, you know?
I was just talking about normies, you know, the other day. Literally just having multiple conversations about normies in front of normies, and like
Mhm.
being like, I'm not trying to offend you, but like, just like honestly, with the substance now being so like popularized,
Oh yeah, yeah.
which is good. Love it, love it. Hope to me gets her
I
Oscar
still
and
haven't
this and
seen it.
that. Very fun. But I was explaining, I'm like, yeah, this definitely wasn't a movie. I've been doing that over because like I've had like family members tell me like, I saw it was like really weird. I'm like, yeah, that's something I would have never in a million years recommended. It's like,
Yeah.
like Society type of
Yeah, or like
like
telling or like telling people at work to watch I saw the TV glow or
yeah,
something
yeah,
like
it's like
that. You know?
80s schlock prosthetic horror done in a certain thing where you're like, I
Oh
don't
yeah, yeah, like
yeah. So you mentioning them makes me go, no, I this although I will say that the coffee table that has me your description has me interested in watching it just because I want to know
I
what
mean, like I said, it's
oh,
not. It's we didn't shut it off. My
mhm.
wife and I did not shut it off. Although I was kind of constantly checking in to see if she was wanting to. You know what I mean? I was kind of waiting for her to be like, I don't want to watch this. This is not. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
What we thought it was. Um, but yeah, like in the same vein of like where when evil lurks had that kind of like cruel nastiness to it.
understood what you're putting down. Yeah, there's been a few horrors like since we last talked. One is I finally got around to 2014 Starry Eyes.
No, I haven't seen that.
Low budgety. This is a story of like woman wants to become actress in California wants to become famous. You know, gets into the occult basically to do said, and it's a body horror-ish type movie and
Okay.
somewhat of a possession movie. It was pretty dope. I believe I also watched that on Shutter. It was all right.
Can't beat it. Oh, Coffee Table I watched on Canopy, but I think it might have also been available somewhere else too.
I said I literally just googled it. Honestly, I think Coffee Table is on Tubi. It's on Tubi already.
Is it on Tubi? Yeah.
Yeah. And then what else I watched? I saw Nosferatu 1.5 times.
I also saw Nosferatu.
And I really liked it. But the first time I saw it, I did not do the movie its favor, and I was like, well, I have this AMC pass. I'll go in the morning. I'm off from work today over the holidays. I had to do a task at like 6 a.m. that day, so I was doing stuff from like 6 to about 9:30, then ran errands, and I was like, great, I'll catch my 11:30 movie. Sat down in that movie, and I had nodded
Yeah,
because I was alone. It was sold out at 11:45, which was pretty neat to
that's
see.
awesome.
But just the movie, everyone don't like this.
Yeah,
It's
and it's
such a
like a real, Robert Eggers, like, lots of moody music and
yeah.
long, slow
So
panning shots and like camera moves and stuff. It can be sleep inducing.
so when I was awake during the movie, I was like, I'm really liking this, but I was also thinking a lot of times you got to stay awake, so I wasn't
Yeah.
listening to the movie. So like a week later, my buddy was like, "You want to go see it?" I was like, "Let's do it." I'd not realized how much I actually like slept through, like
Yeah,
not
you didn't realize
dozed
what all you
off
had missed. Yeah.
because he was like something happened in the screen. He's like, "Does that?" We don't talk in the movies, and I was like, "I don't know that at all. I don't know if it's supposed to be like our projector and audio screwed up
Oh, okay. You thought
during
and he was like, "Is this an artistic
yeah, that's
choice?"
what it felt
Or
like. It was during the when right before he goes to the count's thing, and the burying, like they're burying the vampire scene.
Oh yeah, where they're taking the girl out to like the sacrifice, but they dig up the vampire or
Yeah,
whatever. And
there's all this audio of Nicholas Hoult talking over it,
yeah,
and like music. It just doesn't.
it was just like a different scene.
But
Yeah,
it seemed like an artistic choice, and then the screen froze. This was like a really nice AMC. And it was like, oh, I slept through a ton of this because I don't remember jack shit of this scene. It was a great scene. Anyway, so saw that. You saw that too. Really, I really
yeah.
dug it.
I will say, this may be a controversial take. I think it is. It's probably I love it. I don't think Robert Eggers has made a bad movie, but I think it's probably my least favorite Robert Eggers movie. And I don't know if that has to do with the fact that I've just have seen this story so many times. So like I'd rather see his artistic flourish towards something more original, like his other three movies, or if I don't know, but because this is definitely by far his most like safe, conventional movie. Although I thought The Northman was pretty accessible, like. As far as like artsy movies go, I thought it was something you could recommend to almost anybody. You know what I mean?
I think the hard thing with that is, I agree with you. It's like mythological stories of war. Like it's weird. They're like not in vogue in our time, so it's like.
But it also is just kind of a revenge movie too.
Yeah.
Like at its core, it's just a revenge story.
I know.
So I feel like that's something that almost anybody can kind of grasp.
I just mean like from a cultural. If this was like 2005 or something, and you're off the heels of like Lord of the Rings and Troy and those type of movies, and even Gladiator, coincidentally enough, you'd kind of be like, I think that would have been a hit. The Northman would have been a hit.
Fair.
They'd be like, this is just dope revenge movie that's like Nordic.
Although also historically, I feel like Viking stuff kind of does not do great.
No, I don't know
like,
why.
There's not like a really great Viking movie that everybody loves.
I'm trying to.
You got like the 13th Warrior. People don't like that, although I think that's actually a pretty decent movie. Do you remember the Carl Urban movie Pathfinder?
No.
That was like about a Viking who gets raised by natives, and he's like a native guy. I feel like there's never been a real strong Viking.
Yeah, because apologies, I'm calling it something. I was referring to Sword and Sandal movies. Which,
right. But you would think it would appropriately like fit in with that. But it kind of never. I don't feel like there's a Viking thing that ever really like hit in the way that a Gladiator movie or it does feel like it should be part of that genre, but it's kind of not.
It's such a cinematic mythology to begin with that and storytelling that like who knows. And also like now the MCU's Thor has kind of
I guess that's as close as they've gotten, huh?
Hercules in New York, that's not Nordic.
Well, like I said, it doesn't matter. I don't need the Northman to have been popular for me to love it. I think Northman's fucking incredible.
That's not what I'm talking. That's not what we were talking about. Yeah, I agree with you though. I still think my favorite Eggers is The Witch.
Yeah. Oh, and The Lighthouse is one that, like, the first time I watched it, I was like, it's fine. And then I've watched it like 2 more times, and every time I watch it, I like it a little bit more.
I've only seen it the once, and I had I get it. So maybe
I would recommend it. But the thing is, it's always hard to recommend a rewatch. We've had this conversation before because time is limited. You only have so much of it, and I can barely be like, oh, well, you didn't like it, give it another chance. Like, you don't have to.
Also,
but
like,
if you're inclined to, I did get more out of multiple watches.
But also, if you're, I think rewatches really rely on when you're ready to rewatch it too. Like,
that's true.
I was talking the other day, like ratings change all the time. It's just because you saw some 5 years ago and you're like, that was fine, and then you watch it 5 years later and it's like, that was pretty good. Who knows? But you decided to watch it that day. So yeah, actually that kind of would happen with me with Nosferatu, even though like I said, I slept through most of it, so I can't come out of it being like, I gave it a strong, it wasn't the movie's
God's
fault.
honest try.
But it was like, oh, it was like this. Then I saw the whole fucking thing and was like, yeah.
Oh, it's a work of art. Like I said, I hate to even like rank the Eggers movies because they're all perfect masterpieces. But then they said he was going to do Labyrinth, and I was like, Stop! Don't make him adapt things. Please let him just do his own
Oh,
thing.
especially things that are iconic with puppetry, like the Nosferatu makes sense to me because it's like you have a silent film, and then you have like a one in the '70s
Yeah.
that is like I saw you and Yusuf talking about the other. Like I've never seen it either, but like it's not in the pop culture as a like you gotta
No,
watch this movie,
not really.
and then like you gotta be like real in the know to be like, oh, and Shadow of the Vampire was really fun.
By the way, I watched all three of those before going to see Nosferatu. I watched the 22 one, the 70s one, and Shadow of the Vampire.
Shadow of the Vampire is great. That's
Shadow of the Vampire is awesome. It's probably my favorite. Honestly,
uh,
of the four movies we're talking about, it's probably my favorite Nosferatu movie.
it's just unique. It's different and unique, and the performances are great. Like
And
my favorite.
I always, you see people that are always like, "What's your favorite movie about movie making?" And I always forget about Shadow of the Vampire. And I'm gonna try to remember to throw that one in the conversation next time I see that prompt.
And that's a good one. And there is a great, write that down because we need to use that again. There's a great Are You Afraid of the Dark episode that utilizes the royalty freeness of Nosferatu so well.
Hey, I love it.
And it's about a theater that's dying, a movie theater that's dying. And this guy comes with a film canister and he's like, show this horror movie and your film will be sold out.
Everybody will flip out.
And it's Nosferatu. And what happens is happening is the vampires coming out of the screen and like getting the workers, or allegedly. So the kid working at the thing has to go into the screen to fight Nosferatu to get his like coworker back. It's really clever for a 25-minute children's show from the '90s.
Well, and like you can't deny that even people who like don't know much about Nosferatu or the legacy of it, that that design is as iconic as Dracula.
Well,
Like as far as like types of vampire, that's an archetype all its own. The like
well,
bald, the pointy ears, and the rat teeth. That's like its own whole separate thing, you know?
the finger. Well, the
Yeah.
now we're talking about Nosferatu. Say
Well, I was gonna say
Eggers was
we'll get ready to transition into Misery. I do
yeah
want to take because you talked about
Egger.
Are You Afraid of the Dark? Real quick, I want to mention I have not watched it yet, but there's a new Goosebumps
Oh, I
show
watched it.
with David Schwimmer.
Watched it.
I haven't watched it yet, so no spoilers. But I thought it was very funny that they wanted me to believe that David Schwimmer was a teen in 1994.
So that is a big. I actually had a lot of fun with this series. I think it
Yeah,
improves. For the record, I think it improved. I forgot I watched it yesterday. To be quite honest with you, that says a lot about it. But I was pretty.
made a
I've
big
been pretty
impact.
sick. Been pretty sick. I just binged it. It improves on the first mini series season one. Like I think
Yeah,
it's
it's
a
better
better.
than the first one. Yeah,
Which was still pretty fun. Is yes, David Schwimmer should be like 45 in this role, and
yeah,
he's clearly like 60.
yeah.
And they have him in like just such dark hair that they're giving him like I mean I gotta but he is like rocking like a bang. You
Yeah,
know,
they're kind of trying to young him up by putting him in a hooded sweatshirt and
yeah,
stuff.
well that's if clip it plays it actually makes sense in
Oh,
there
I
if you
like
look
David Schwimmer, and I actually think it'll probably be
he
good. I just
plays
thought it was funny in the
he
ad. They were like, he was one of the teens that disappeared in 1994. I was like, that motherfucker was fully on Friends in 1994.
he I will say he's not shockingly just because he never does anything really fun in the role. Like
Yeah,
you're getting you're getting Green Zone David Schwimmer
I
in
love
this
Greenzo.
series.
I was just talking about how the 2-pack of Greenzo and then Rosemary's Baby, those episodes are back to back. When you're watching 30 Rock, you're like, damn, they hit the sweet spot here.
It's so nice.
All right, let's actually talk about
Let's talk
Misery.
about Misery.
Enough of this. The people in the comments are raging about the
Our
time.
comments. Our,
The comment sections are ablaze.
my Laura this weekend, my one of my cousin, she was like, oh, she's a doctor. She's like, I'm doing a podcast. So I got invited to do a podcast, and I was like, just be yourself. And it was like, it's like, how does yours do? I'm like, oh, like I said, like way too high of a number. Like we get like 100 to 200 views. Laura looked at me like, show. And I'm like, all right, we get between like 60 and maybe 100 views, and the rest are bots on YouTube.
Yeah, most
but,
of them are YouTube. We get like 300 bots.
but it was so funny. Like, I was like, you know what, I deserve to get called out for that, but like, it's fine. Let me lie.
Hey.
But anyway,
we're not monetizing. We should be allowed to take that number. We're not trying to monetize off of it. We should be allowed to hold our head high.
No, we don't. We do nothing. We're talking about Misery today. The Rob Reiner, Stephen King,
also William Goldman and Barry Sonnenfeld. Like the behind the scenes talent on this one is wild, right?
I was like, I've seen Misery is one of my favorite. It's probably one of my favorite thrillers of all time, but especially just it's so tight, it's so good, and I was like, I've never paid attention enough to be like, oh, Barry Sonnenfeld was the cinematographer.
Yeah, like literally right after this, he directs Addams Family and then goes on and does Men in Black and stuff. Like I think this is the last movie he was the DP on.
Yeah, this was his like jumping off point.
Yeah. And also like you can't deny the power of Rob Reiner right now. This movie is sandwiched between was it Harry Met Sally and A Few Good Men. Like you look at Rob Reiner's output in the last 10 or 15 years, and there's not really anything to talk about.
I went back,
but man,
and I was
in this era, he was destroying.
It goes. I don't want him as an actor. I want him as a
It's like
director.
Spinal Tap, Stand By Me.
It's Spinal Tap. Yeah, I don't know what the sure thing is, but Stand By Me, The Princess Bride, When Harry Met Sally, Misery,
which he also worked with William Goldman. Also did Princess Bride, so they had already collaborated there.
A Few Good Men, and then he gets absolutely destroyed by doing that movie North, and I only know that because there's that famous Roger Ebert review about it.
Yeah.
But then I think he bounces back. The American President was a big
American President's a hit. He's got a couple more before he really falls off.
And then I'll be honest with you, and this is just my own lack of knowledge. After The American President, there's quite a big list of movies. I'm just talking about as director.
Yeah,
I recognize two of them.
Yeah, so there's not much on. Yeah, like I said, it's wild how high he was riding at that era to see what
This is 1995. So 96, he does something called The Ghosts of Mississippi. Then The Story of Us, Alex and Emma. I haven't heard any of those. I've heard of Rumor Has It. It's trash. That's Jennifer. That's the story about The Graduate.
Oh, okay,
yeah, it ain't good. Sorry, and then that's the next one I've heard of, The Bucket List.
Yeah, I remember Bucket List.
Something called Flipped. So we're in 2010. The Magic of Belle Isle, and So It Goes, Being Charlie, LBJ, Shock and Awe, and then recently, he's done two recently, but Albert Brooks Defending My Life was great, but like that was Albert Brooks saying, direct a movie about my life.
Right, it's like when somebody directs your stand-up special. It's like, okay, well, what do they do? They just point the camera at you? Because
Rob Reiner is a kind of a big part. It was a really charming doc. I recommend.
Oh yeah, I watched the doc. It was good.
And then God and Country did not direct it, so I don't know. Anyway.
Yeah, but like all this to say, just wild to see him kind of like in his prime and like know that he kind of just fell. Now he's more of like he's more known for like bitching about Trump on Twitter now.
He's very well. That's what's really fun. So literally before we recorded, I was telling the show I'm watching Larry Sanders from the '90s, and that it's really funny time capsule to be watching because they'll be like, this guest on pop culture, and like you can tell we're in like 1994 because they're like, Rob Reiner's to come on, and Larry's like, it's so great, I could have an intellectual guy on, I could talk about his movies and this and and I guess because of that A Few Good Men, like political things kind of. It was the whole thing of the show, and it's very Curb, that show. But yes, that Rob Reiner is very, I think, much known for just being a political mouthpiece or showing up in, like, I know a lot of my generation. He played Jess Day's dad in New Girl. He played Joey Dishon's dad, and like shit like that. He would pop up. He popped up in a.
He has like a bit part. He pops up in 30 Rock, like we were just talking about. But at this time, he was directing one of the best thrillers of all time, and also maybe one of the best Stephen King adaptations. Like, definitely top 10.
So he calls it.
I know
Stephen
he
King.
loves it because he got to collaborate very closely on this one.
Stephen King calls at minimum a top 5 and the best performance that'll ever be in one of his movies, which in Kathy Bates.
Can't argue there.
Yeah, I don't think there's an argument here. But I also think
what do you, real quick, while we're talking about Stephen King and while we're talking about this movie, what do you think about the whole, like, the metaphor for addiction? Do you think that was always there? Do you think that's a thing he came up with later, looking back on it?
So
I know what he says, but I'm just on your opinion.
I didn't read the book, but I imagine it works in the book because apparently it goes into his addiction in the book.
Okay, good.
I don't think the movie works as a metaphor for addiction because you'd have to know the personal life of Stephen King to get that. Yeah. Paul in this movie is not an addict. There's no signs of him being an addict.
No.
So,
and I know that, like, he was like, the idea that Annie's the addiction and that cocaine was his biggest fan and kept him going and everything. But
I don't think it.
I think it's. I don't know. It's fine. It just smacks a little bit of a thing where it's like, I don't know. It seems like maybe a revelation he came to later, thinking back on it more than something he was consciously doing at the time. But I don't claim to be some kind of expert.
But I don't think it, like, I think it's one of those things that, like, I remember when I talked to Lon about Invasion of the Body Snatchers, right? Mm-hmm. They're like really heavily politically charged, and I think it was like really during COVID. I was like, oh my god, the right. That's just them. They're the pod. Even goes, the pod people in Lon. I remember Lon saying, yeah, but they could just point the finger and say that's about you.
You're the pod
us on this.
Actually, yeah.
I think it's the same shit here. It's like, I don't know. I could watch it and be like, oh my god, that's just like, well, I don't have alcoholism, but that's like my own alcoholism, my addiction, like, or like my abuse. No, the bad analogy. That's our abusive relationship. That's the thing I'm in, and like Annie's still there. So like,
yeah, I mean, definitely now, I would say it's much more obvious. Like the more obvious take nowadays is the, like, parasocial fandom and the toxicity of fandoms and like all that. It, like, rings much truer now than it probably even did then.
Yeah, I think the movie definitely.
Like, 70% of fans are basically an Annie Wilkes now. Like, in this movie, she rattles off some facts about him that are supposed to seem weird and creepy, but that's shit that people know about their celebrities. Today, stan accounts know way more than that. Like,
yeah, they'd be like, oh,
Annie Wilkes would just have a fanzine now.
Oh man, Taylor Swift loves her avocados, but frozen. Like, what? Like that. But yeah, that's a good point. Like today, I think today would be hard. I think it would be really hard to pull this off today because they'd be doing backflips to try to.
And I mean, there's still. I mean, you had the Fanatic a couple years ago, and we did the Fan on. This kind of like obsessive fan thriller still kind of exists in its own way.
Well, a fan.
We've seen variations on it.
Let's be
Smile, I would say, even had, like, Smile 2 even has maybe some DNA of Misery in it, with like the kind of creepiness of your fans and being afraid of your fans, and
No, there's a way to do it. I didn't mean like that. I think moving on your point of like the shit she's saying would be like, you're gonna be like, oh yeah, well, like, you can Wikipedia that was in
right. Like I said, it's just not weird to like be obsessively knowledgeable about your niche fandom anymore. That just doesn't seem strange like it used to. And as the kids say, it hits different.
It hits different. But this movie, that's why it's timeless. It's gonna be timeless.
So I guess we should talk just a little bit about the basic plot, because you have
it's very simple.
Paul Sheldon, he's up writing his book in like a little cabin.
He's a superstitious James Caan, who I think is honestly is equally as good as.
You know what? I listened to a couple of podcasts to make sure. I do it partially to make sure I don't like just repeat other people's talking points and stuff. But I'll tell you what, I realized something that fucking bores the crap out of me, unless it's got a really specific thing where it's like, not getting Indiana Jones changed the course of Tom Selleck's career. But I hate when people rattle off who was maybe gonna be
Jack
cast
Nicholson.
for a movie other than James Caan. It's like, yeah, it was offered to a bunch of dudes who were more famous than James Caan at the time, and they didn't do it, and then it was James Caan. Who gives a shit? I just don't care.
I did think the one part was interesting that I read, because it's probably the same shit people rattle off, was James Caan turned down One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest back in the 70s, and it was like his one regret of like, then Jack Nicholson gets like, in his Oscar nom or something. So James Caan, the lore is that him knowing Jack Nicholson turned it down was like, oh, I should take it because like that fucked me over once. Who knows how true that is? But you're right. That is not like
but see, that's the thing. That's a little anecdote. That's something. Just rattling off a list of
Oh,
people
they
it was
also list.
offered to. I
They
get
also
so
list
I've heard, like I said, I just don't care about that.
Like I normally, like I say, I keep the wiki up over here all the time. Like cast, there's literally these things don't have blurbs about casting. I'm not going to read any of it. There's a blurb about casting. It names.
I'll tell you what, you don't need to read anything about the casting because I can tell you the casting was excellent in this movie.
Well, it's I know we started talking about plot. I was like, well, actually, James Caan's just the James Caan demeanor. Let's be real. He's only ever played James Caan, and it's why he was successful. He's let's get Kathy Bates.
Well, I mean, like,
all-time
you're never
performance.
gonna be able to say enough about Kathy Bates. She literally broke out with this movie and won an Oscar.
But I'm saying James Caan and
it
like
has been
hindsight.
amazing since. But
James Caan in hindsight, I'm like, you should at least given him a nod too. Like he was that
absolutely.
good. That's.
And I've heard something, you read stuff about like, oh, was he miscast in this? Should it have been somebody? I think the James Caan-ness of it really makes it. And I'll tell you exactly why. Because we've seen plenty of movies where James Caan plays a dude who would smack a woman. So like, that if his shoulder was right and his legs weren't busted up, he would hit Annie Wilkes with like an open hand slap in the face. So like that tension is there. Like the taking away the ability of James Caan to backhand a lady is like you're stealing his power.
That's the other like antidote that I think that I read that I was like, oh, that's useful. Is they didn't like each other either.
Oh no,
James Caan. Well, they didn't like how their acting methods.
Oh.
James Caan and Kathy Bates. So like Kathy Bates was from the theater, and she's like, we have to rehearse and train.
She's like the real deal, and James
like,
Caan was like, hey, I'm Jimmy Caan.
Yeah, James Caan was like, little rehearsal is better than none of it, And apparently, like Rob Reiner was like, just to I guess more to Kathy Bates, use that frustration playing Annie.
If you were looking at anecdotes, I'm sure you came across the thing too, where like he came to set so hungover one day they like threw away a whole day's worth of shooting. They like told him they lost the the film or whatever.
Then he paid for the day, which is such like an old like that type of like stereotype. I'm like, oh yeah, here's some money, I'll fix it.
Right, like, oh, I'm sorry, hey, let me buy off some love.
Yeah. I just like to think this is the same guy from Elf. It's the same directory. This is how we got into the book.
It could absolutely be.
This is how we got into the book publishing business.
Yeah. He basically took over Lauren Bacall's gig and like again. Oh yeah, Lauren Bacall's in this movie.
Yeah. This small cast fucking rules.
Oh man. We'll wait till we talk about the plot a little more to get into it. But
yeah, so I was going to get back to the movie. So yeah, you have this writer. He's very superstitious.
He throws a snowball an undetermined amount when he thinks he's a badass. I don't know.
Yeah, it's a little strange. All right, Steven. You did this stuff.
Oh, there's so much like Stephen King shit in this where like people will be like, oh, Paul Sheldon? Oh no, he's a good guy, real down to earth. No, I know he's a big famous writer, but he still seems like a good guy. It's like, okay, we get it, Steven.
There's a few Stephen King movies that do that where they're like, or like stuff with Stephen, we're like, oh yeah, he just comes to town, nice guy. I've seen it before. Yeah. There's even like the thing with the typewriter being the ends are broken. It's because his first typewriter had like a broken end.
Yeah.
And I'm like, cool, Steve, cool, fandom of Stephen King.
Yeah.
But no, he's there. He's writing his book. He finished it. Like I said, it has a superstition. This
He's
book also.
driving way too fast on that snowy road. Like he's not.
Okay. Okay.
Like
Time out. This movie has the same problem I have with another classic, Jack Frost. You're telling me, both in Colorado for the record,
okay.
you're telling me you've been coming to this area for that long and these are the cars you're driving
Right,
in
he's
the
in his
snow?
Mustang on the road. Also, like, I don't just mean there's snow on the. It's like an unplowed road. There's
Yeah.
just like no.
But so in the movie Jack Frost, he does the same thing. They live in Colorado and he's driving like a Cutlass, with his band. He's like, it's good. No tires on this bad boy. So same accident. One just turns into a snowman. One gets taken in by hobbled,
Like,
taken in
yeah,
by Kathy Bates. So no. So he does that. He drives, and what did you say? The misery books are like they're like trash novels.
well, yeah, like he has this crash, and then we get like while he's knocked out, we get a little flashback to him and Lauren Bacall, and yeah, they're like bodice rippers. They're like kind of trashy gothic
Yeah,
romances about
airport,
a lady in like the 1800s or something,
beach
right?
reads, beach
Yeah,
reads.
beach reads,
Yeah,
absolutely. And he has what I would call the extras dilemma. I don't know if you ever watched Ricky Gervais's show
no,
that he
I
did
never.
after The Office called Extras. But the main character basically creates a super popular sitcom, but it's like a really lowbrow, like a lot of catchphrases and dumb sex jokes and like really
Yeah.
like trashy.
Hey
And he's
now,
got all the success, but he has no like creative integrity and like nobody respects him and like the people that he wants to think he's cool don't. And that's kind of how Paul feels, and obviously probably a little bit how Stephen King feels, which is like I'm trapped doing this one thing. I want to branch out, but I don't think people will accept me.
hmm
They only want this one kind. They want to be like fed this one thing that I do, and I don't think Stephen King hates his creations as much as Paul hates Misery, but
no, but it's definitely
but
like
there's definitely some of that in it. I
not
would
his
say.
id. Um, but yeah, so crashes his car.
But
That
we find
is,
out from the sorry, one thing, the prudent thing is we find out from the conversation with Lord Bacall that he's killing off Misery. He's ending the series,
this is the final
and that's
hurrah.
relevant because later it'll come into play.
Yeah, it says it's a real simple plot in that regard, and
And then we see somebody, we don't know who it is yet, but we see somebody crowbar open the door of his car, drag him out, throw him up. I mean, a very strong person carries James Caan out of that wreck
in that snow.
in that snow.
And that was one thing of the casting. I think when reading some anecdotes Stephen King said of till like years later oh god, I'm trying to remember a thing. They did a play version. They went to a musical, and someone else, Laurie Metcalf, ended up
Laurie
being Annie
Metcalf and
Wilkes.
Bruce Willis, I believe.
Bruce Willis, that which is awesome.
Yeah, it sounds like great. I would have loved to have seen that.
But originally, or part of it, they were like Julia Roberts maybe, and Stephen King was like, no, it can't. It has to be like a burly woman to play Annie Wilkes. And the irony is, the two other Annie Wilkes that I'm familiar with, Laurie Metcalf and
Lizzie Kaplan.
Lizzie Kaplan on Castle Rock, thank you, played
I didn't
her.
know if you watched Castle Rock or not. I
I'm
was going to
aware.
mention it.
I'm aware of it. I don't
Okay.
watch it. So anyway, but no one can do it better than
No, I will say Castle Rock's fun. If you're a Stephen King head, they kind of like blend some of the stories. It's like both seasons. The seasons are like anthologies. I'm pretty sure they don't. So season 2 is the Annie Wilkes season, and they kind of like blend in some Salem's Lot and stuff. It's pretty interesting. It does serve as a pretty decent kind of prequel for Annie. But like I said, none of that Stephen King canon. I don't think. So.
Yeah, it's like that. Yeah, I'm familiar with it. It's
It's like a King Elseworld. So if you're a King head.
yeah. It's
It was a well-made show, though.
there was that show on or it's the CBS Once Upon a Time or something. It's like that
Oh
shit.
yeah.
All right, but so he wakes up he's in bed, and this sweet. I guess why she's so terrifying too is she's sweet half the time. This
Well, yeah.
sweet, seemingly sweet woman is
She's
like,
disarming.
yeah, hey,
She
she's
seems
soft
kind of like
spoken.
just kind of down home country, She's
Hey,
not
there's
sophisticated.
oh cockly doodly doo. There's been this. So there's been this accident. She explains, hey, there's been this accident. The roads are closed. The phones are down.
Yeah.
But I was a nurse, and I've reset your legs. They're really beat up with compound fractures. But you're
Love
gonna
the
be okay.
practical effects on the makeup on his
So,
legs. So
so good.
gruesome. Yeah.
It's
Like subtle, but like really,
if you look,
they make my legs ache when I look at them. You
you
know what
look
I
at it, you're
mean?
like, legs could look like that. Um, so he's like, fine, okay, and she just assures him like, we'll call your daughter and your agent and all that when the things go.
Yeah.
More time passes, and she also just drops the famous, hey, and coincidentally
I'm
I'm
your
your
number
number
one
fan.
fan.
Um,
Um, Obviously, this is a classic two-hander. It's all Kathy Bates, and then to a lesser extent James Caan. That's mostly them. But we're about to get introduced to my favorite character, fucking Buster, the
he steals the
sheriff.
movie. He steals the movie.
Him and his wife both. We got Richard Farnsworth as Buster, who's incredible, and then Frances Sternhagen, who pops up in a couple Stephen King movies, including The Mist.
Mm.
Um,
So I think
she's the old lady in The Mist, also,
is
and
she
I
okay?
love their horny energy. I love
When you're in
his
this
like
car,
kind of quiet befuddlement, but like he's like very No Country for Old Men here. He's slowly working his way through this one.
yeah.
I don't know why it takes him so long to suspect the well-known accused murderer who lives in town.
Well, I chalk that to yeah, that's just a movie, right? Like in the movie world, like I think he's supposed to be gone for like let's call
I
it four
think
months or so.
she just it's supposed I think what you're supposed to understand from that is that she's kind of forgotten
That's
by
what I was gonna say.
society
She's
a little bit. She's kind of
forgotten.
like pulled herself away. She lives off the grid. She like exists mostly just in these books in this fantasy world of herself.
Yeah, I
We
don't think
see that
she.
she's just sits in her chair and watches dating game and listens to her Liberace records. She's
I don't think.
isolated,
I don't think she's known by anyone
I mean, I
except that.
think like once he sees her and is reminded of her, you definitely get the impression that he does remember what happened and that she was on trial and shit. Like that's public knowledge. But
Yeah.
I do think that like
Um.
it's supposed to play into the idea that Annie is insignificant, that she's not to be
Yeah.
that you don't have to concern yourself with her. It's part of that the
But
way she
but
carries herself,
there's a few, if you want to cinema sins it, like, yeah, there's a few, like, you mean the FBI and the other police officers, like a big time, like, person of importance died, like went missing,
Well,
that
yeah,
no one else was like, there's crowbar marks on this door.
I love that when they do finally find the car and then he says the thing about the crowbar and it's like, you didn't think to share that with JT Walsh up on
He's
the
like,
giving his press
these
conference up
guys don't
there?
think
Like,
that, but there's more to this. It's like, no shit.
yeah, you don't even have a proper deputy. You have your wife trying to give you a hand job on the way to a crime scene, and you don't think to tell another cop that maybe someone drugged the body out of here?
Or to even just, and like I said, I'm never watching this movie with this thought, but even like, yeah, it was in this area when it kind of happened, and you could barely, the snow was up to your waist,
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
yeah, so there's some
No, these
silly
aren't
stuff.
criticisms. These are just funny little
Yeah, these
anecdotes.
are,
Because like I love this movie's so good. It feels timeless. It very much feels like a movie. It obviously was made in 1990, but it definitely doesn't feel like a 90s. We have not transitioned fully into the 90s yet. This is a very much like a 70s or an 80s movie.
it, but it has a little bit of the 90s feel to it in a good way,
I mean, I
from a
think we're inching
filmmaking,
towards that because Rob
filmmaking
Reiner's like,
wise.
but like
Um,
I still feel like we haven't like fully transitioned here.
yeah, I mean, I was gonna say with Buster and all that too, and the filmmaking was like the comedic stuff and all that. I'm like, I know that's Rob Reiner's influence there, but like we should make these characters these two folksy old people in this.
Yeah, I mean, I think there is a cop in the book, but I don't think he's anything like this. I think this stuff, like the Buster character, is like more fleshed out and different for the for the movie.
Buster, and it's the worst, but it has to happen. It's just classic Stephen King.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
It's Scatman Crothers.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
So, back at the house, he's now, kind of noticing some erratic behavior.
Well, Annie wants to read his new book.
Yeah, he's like, hey.
The book he was writing that he just finished is not a misery book. The misery book that we see him talking to Lauren Bacall about is just coming out. But the book he finished up at the cabin's a different book, and Annie asks if she can read his manuscript, and she's reading it, and the first thing she complains about is the bad language, because it's like, it's kind of you get the impression it's kind of an autobiographical-y type story about the way James Caan grew up,
Yeah.
And she starts, this is where we kind of see her first little bit of her temper, getting mad about the bad language and yelling, and she spills soup on James Caan and stuff. You just get, it's the first time we get a little bit of the manic,
Yeah, it's nice. I remember in middle school, I can't remember if it was a sick day or a snow day, and I want to say it was a snow day, and it's probably why I still relate it. Like, great snow day of all time, because we had a nice sliding door where TV was at the time, so like you saw the snow, glass. You saw the snow.
You like drifted up against the glass, kind of.
And I just remember my dad like it must have been on. It was either on HBO or TNT or one of them, but being like, "That's a good movie. We should watch this." I'm like 7th grade, so it was like, yeah. Edge of the that's why I can't remember if it was a sick day or snow day, but like being like you don't know, like if you don't know what's coming in the movie, like now it's in pop culture, but it's 6th, 7th grade. Like if you showed it to Harrison, he's gonna go, "Oh yeah, like I'm not familiar with the contents of Misery."
Right.
Yeah, I just remember being blown away, being like, "It's so what's she doing? Why?
Yeah,
she's so intense. She's fucking erratic."
Yeah.
You fight her back.
Yeah, and you're scared, like he's basically helpless. Like any movement, it causes him intense pain. So he's totally at her mercy. And now we're seeing that she's a lunatic.
Yeah, and and at this time though, she's also, she's given her. He's given him painkillers.
Yeah.
Which he slowly realizes maybe I shouldn't take the painkillers.
He hasn't quite hatched that plan yet. We do have a scene I have to talk about. I love the reveal. They're having like this thoughtful conversation, and then it's revealed that like he's pissing, and she's just been standing there the whole time and waiting for him to finish, and she hands him the thing of piss, and she's all talking and gesticulating with her hands, and like there's a top on the piss jug, but also it's a piss jug.
But then she's doing that. I'm jumping around here, but I'm talking about like the oddities of like the crowbar. When she brings in the grill to light the manuscript on fire.
Yeah.
Which comes soon actually after we're talking about, but she don't think to bring the lid in.
Yeah. Put the top on it. You're gonna have a fire in the house.
Because there's one shot when it's going on. It's clearly not intentional because I'm sure actual Sutton fire. It gets up and above on top of a curtain rod, and in the curtain, it's like right before it cuts away back to her rolling it out. Where I'm like, "Oh, that would have burned down."
Yeah, I bet a crew dude it cuts because a crew guy ran in there with a fire extinguisher. It was like,
yeah. Watch it. It's like a nice flame, and like the curtain's right there.
Yeah.
No, but so that's in a little.
First, we haven't talked about the new Misery book comes,
yes.
And of course Annie's so excited. She loves Misery. She does a little bit of casual racism against Italians because she's so excited about Misery. And then
you're allowed to be racist against Italians even in 2025.
It's fine. They're just
okay.
white people. You can't be racist against white people.
As a guinea.
She actually says Dago, to be fair.
Which is still one of the crazy there's a couple racist Italian slurs. Dago's one of those ones where you go, where'd you grow up?
Yeah, what's that even? Where'd you even get
What?
that?
Wop? All right, so it's okay. I'm Italian.
Yeah, we're allowed to say him. I got an Italian friend.
Yeah, it's fine. Look at this white V-neck.
But the whole thing is, she's excited. She's loving the book. She's reading it. She's so excited. But we know that Misery dies at the end of the book. So we just kind of like, again, there's like a nice little like slow boil tension we're waiting for here. And then it happens and she comes in. I love the way she like comes in in the middle of the night too. It's like she was up late reading the book because she was so enraptured. And then it happened and she just like loses it.
She thwarts her whole plan when she loses it too. She's like gets into a fit. She's like, I never told anyone you're here.
Because she had lied to him, saying that when she was in town, she had talked to his agent and all this other bullshit. And it's all been a lie. And she lets the cat out of the bag. She's so mad
because the agent calls the sheriff's office just so we're aware. Like that happened in this time of just like I think it had only been maybe like 2-3 days.
I imagine the whole movie, maybe takes course of the push, maybe 3 months?
Yeah, I think the book is longer, if I'm not mistaken. I Googled it because I was curious when we were watching it. I didn't get a straight answer. So I came to about 3 months time frame of like 3 to 4 months.
That sounds about right. Right.
From his legs are going and the weather. What the fuck is that?
Andy's flip out here is really good. Really, like I said, Kathy Bates is so scary. Oh, sorry, you got something?
That was weird. A plane must have been flying really low that it was like shaking my like windows and shit.
Damn.
Sorry,
got a police helicopter hovering?
Had to have been. I've never felt that. Well, I just
it was a UFO.
I wanted to make sure it wasn't one of those random ass earthquakes or something. Because the last time, anyway.
I love this. I love this flip out. I don't know if I think Annie's scarier when she's doing her like big, or when she's like does the flat affect when she's depressed. Later when she comes in and she's just kind of like, I know you don't love me. And then she pulls out that gun and she's just like kind of holding it and looking at it. That might be the scariest she ever is in the whole movie.
Yeah, well then she just like walks outside and like gets in her car and drives away. She's scarier in those scenes, and and all those scenes are really like dimly lit too, comparatively when the more theatrical.
Yeah,
like even the famous hobbling scene. She's calm as a cucumber doing that one.
Oh yeah. Oh, the monologue she gives about like when she kind of like, it's like she's giving a history lesson. Like somehow it's not a horrific act of maiming because there's a history to it or something. So after she flips out about the book, she basically is like, this book that you wrote, this new is evil. You need to purge yourself of this and bring Misery back. So we're going to burn your book. And he tries to give her some bullshit about there being multiple copies. But this is where like her super specific knowledge comes into play. And they play it off as like a weird, creepy thing. But honestly, like I said, nowadays it's mostly normal.
But it still is. She was like, yeah, no, you said that on Merv Griffin. You don't get because
11 years ago or whatever.
Yeah, it's like 1974. So like, yeah. Oh, okay. I do like. I think it's around one of these scenes because you get these little, which again a movie would ruin today, of giving us too much lore of like backstory. You get such good layered of like who she was prior.
Yeah.
And she says a line of like, oh, well, I couldn't do that on the trial. Well, when I was on the trial, the jury didn't, like the stand didn't realize. And you're like, huh?
Yeah, wait, what was that? On trial? What?
She says something to move along the lines. And then obviously we found out later of the hospital, the child murders. And Uh, but yeah. So she basically says, you're
No.
good. You're good now.
She does. Bert makes him, because not only does she makes him light the match and like actually set the fire, and she does that through that little intimidation technique with the lighter fluid, where she's walking, kind of casually flicking lighter fluid over his blanket and shit. I love it. It's so good. So Paul, but this is when Paul starts to finally hatch his little scheme.
Mm-hmm.
He starts saving his pain pills. We talked about that. She sets him up to write, and he uses it as an opportunity to like get her out of the house by telling her she got on the wrong paper. And he like gets a bobby pin and gets out into the house. Now, of course, it's no use. She doesn't have a phone that's hooked up that he can use, but he does manage to like get some extra pills and get a knife for himself.
Yeah, and he does a good
I think
job.
this is the most tense scene in the movie, though, when he's trying to get back to the room.
Yeah, it's
very good, like very well directed tension here.
Well, he tells her, she's like, yeah, I bought you a typewriter and paper and blah blah blah, and he says, we gotta buy me the right paper. This smudges, and even that, she's like, well, I bought the most expensive kind, and that's the only time I've ever related to her, because I don't know if you've ever, I think most humans have done that, where like, what do you mean this is wrong? I bought the most expensive thing that there was.
Yeah, I bought the top of the line. Well, how could it be wrong?
And she kind of has okay, well, I want him to write this book, so she goes out. No, the most intense scene in the whole movie is 100% him getting in the in the wheelchair,
struggling to get back to the room, like,
because it's her front door it's locked from the inside.
He can't get out of the house.
Rephrase this: there's no like knob to the front door; it's all locked, just with straight locks. And like certain rooms are locked up and this and that, but him just, and he comes back and she's like, Paul, you're so flushed. And the only thing,
he's all sweating and huffing and puffing.
Yeah. The only thing he knocks over is this little like penguin. And he like puts it this way. And I had a question, like, do you think she knew he could get around pretty much right after that?
She's later, when she busts him out, she says that she knew, but she didn't know how he was doing it.
Yeah, because later in the movie, when they have their toast and she spills the wine, I know she gets flustered and she's
I don't know if that was like, that's a tough one, because that's another great scene. But I've always wondered, like looking back, knowing that she knew he was getting out, was that deliberate?
That's what I'm saying. Was it deliberate? Like, I'm not going to trust
over
anything that Paul gives me.
Yeah,
she's
but
crazy.
It's like,
she's not dumb.
No, she's not dumb, but I don't know. Is she that canny though? Like, that's pretty.
Yeah.
That's a pretty far reach. I don't know.
Yeah, that might.
It's not out of the realm. I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility, though. To be fair.
So,
I like that Annie actually helps Paul with his writing a little bit. Like, he starts writing the misery book, and she comes in. She's like, "No, this is bullshit. You can't fake this." She has like the 100% the best argument against bullshit cliffhangers. I love it. She like totally like.
When I was a girl, I used to go to see this. You think I'm done? I know what a cereal is.
Yeah, they also call them cereals. I'm not stupid. I love that whole bit is so good. And she's right. That is a cop out. I hate when shows and movies do that shit. Like, oh, it was just another thing you didn't see. Oh, that you gave me no indication was happening. Yeah, that's a lie. You just lied. You liar.
It's he's sitting there fucking terrified, like, yeah, man, I agree.
I also wonder, like, I don't think once we find out, like, when she starts talking about what the book's about, I love that it's the most, like, he's writing schlock. He's writing fan fiction for her. He's not trying to write a good misery book. No. He's just writing trash that she'll love, which is a departure from the book, because in the book, he does publish that last misery book, and it's, like, a big hit, and everybody loves it. Like, it's like they're like, it's the best misery book he's ever written, or whatever. Like,
yeah, like that other one was successful. Like, people were probably like, okay, misery died. I'm ready to move on.
Yeah.
Or like, let's be real, probably Paul Sheldon, if he had an experience, he'd be like Stephanie Meyer in Twilight. To be like, actually, I wrote the first book from Edward's perspective.
Yeah.
When all of Twilight was done and she tried something else, she went back to Twilight to be like, or no,
Yep.
I think she did that, if I'm not mistaken. And then the Twilight fan fiction, 50 Shades of Grey, I think that author did the same thing where they were like, I don't know what else. I'll just write the first one again, but from another perspective.
Yeah. Yeah.
So like that's a thing that happens.
I mean, hey, you know what? Good for them. If
Get
you
your
can
money.
still make money off of publishing, have at you. You know, I can't. Who am I to judge? But I do like the idea that, like, I don't know. I kind of like. I almost wish they would have left that in where she actually improved his writing to the point where she actually made Misery a better series. Like, but I like the dumb stuff that's putting in there that's clearly just fan service. Where like, oh, Misery! I always knew Misery was descended from royalty and shit. Like, it's so stupid.
I also feel remiss due to writing. I love in the early signs of him being or her being crazy. A big tell of that was just Misery the pig that gets to run around.
Yeah.
Like put him like,
And also, that was a beautiful pig. That wasn't
oh
some
yeah.
nasty barn pig. That was like some
No,
beautiful.
but
it had like red hair. That was a better looking pig.
but like city boy is sitting in there, be like, what the fuck's going on?
Yeah. She's all snorting, chuffing with it. I also love. We talked a little bit about the dinner scene and his failed plan to drug her.
Yeah,
Which is great. It's a great scene. Again, like when she knocks that wine over, it's devastating. Like,
well, Paul. That's
you
why I
know how
think
much work and how
James,
long he took to like get that
because
plot
he
plan
had he had a
going. Like,
deadly amount of painkiller in there.
yeah, which also means that's painkiller he wasn't taking, so he was actually probably suffering
Mm-hmm.
more pain because he was saving painkillers.
Yeah.
You know, like
No, but like James Caan, that's why I'm like his performance is equally is because like I don't know, like this is 1990. He's already had a decade plus of like roles and been a star and like they're big performances. He's a big dramatic performer. This is all facial expression and
oh yeah, you
like
read the defeat on his face
the
when that wine gets
that's
tipped over. He's good. Like, like
like
we're
come on.
dismissive and be like, oh, he always plays James Caan, but that doesn't mean he can't emote on screen with his face and do, you know what I mean? Like,
Mhm.
he's good in this. I love the toast to misery. Like, it's just so funny toasting to misery
Mhm.
when he's in this miserable situation, and like, you know, it's just the double meaning. It's just really hilarious to me.
I get such a kick too out of that right before that scene of the she's like, "Ooh, do you like Barry Manilow? I'm sorry, do you like Liberace?"
Liberace?
And James Conn just be like, he's who do you think was in the first row every time it came to the form? Me. He's great, and it's like
Yeah.
it's so funny because it just reminds me of anytime you talk to someone where they're like, "Oh, do you like Harry Potter?" And you're like, you don't want to disappoint. You're like, "It's good."
Yeah.
Whatever, like the fandom. He's like, I just know not to tell this woman that I don't like the things she doesn't like. Like that
Right,
is
exactly. I don't want to get into a whole thing about this, so
like I told you my experience with the I've said it before in this pod before, the AMC TV show dentist I went to who got like angry when I was like, no, I'm not caught up on. I've told you that story
I
before.
don't think so. No.
Oh my god, I'm a junior in college and I go to this dentist. I'm sorry, not this eye doctor, not a dentist, this eye doctor, and um, it's not a normal eye doctor. It's this place where we get like cheap glasses from. It's like kind of in the hood ish, but like they have an eye doctor. But it's like
Yeah,
just
hey.
go there. Like it's just the eye doctor. I'm
It's
like,
what's
all right.
available to me, man. I'm in college.
There's a guy there. Normal, like not a big building. Like the place is like a little bigger. His office is like a little bigger than like this room right here, like examining room. So it's not big, but it's real weird. There is AMC TV show posters and like production shots, wall to wall. Like I'm talking the height of AMC, like Breaking Bad, Walking Dead, Mad
Okay.
Men, and one other, I don't know, one other show. And I'm like, oh, Oh,
I like TV apparently.
Yeah, I'm like, I like Breaking Bad, and I'm behind on Mad Men. You know, I've seen a season or so at that time. I'm still in college, and I kind of bullshit a little bit. I'm like, I've seen some of The Walking Dead, but not much. You know,
Yeah.
each one of those, he was like, oh yeah, my son is a president over at AMC. He produced all these shows. I'm like, oh, that's really cool.
Oh, that's awesome.
But the more I'm like, not caught in a lie, but I'm like, I'm not up to date on any of these. He's like, how aren't you not up to date? You know, it's like, ooh.
He's like getting aggressive. He's like,
yeah,
my son made these shows. You should be watching them.
I would never forget it because I remember he was like, oh, do you remember the tank in Walking Dead? In this first episode, I'm like, kind of not really. He was like, how do you don't? It was such a huge part of the episode. I'm like, I don't want to be like, because I like watched half the episode and was like, I don't know, it's not for me.
This is fine. I don't care about zombies that much.
You know, but you're not gonna. So that's on me, and I'm like, I'm like 20. I'm full of shit to begin with. So, but I was generally 3 seasons into Breaking Bad and just not caught up to the newest season because I was in that college. He was not happy about it. You just remember and then it was like, thanks for coming. I was like, ooh, you just got like, you know, that attitude. Anyway.
Yeah,
that was so my funny. Books. Come in there, he was getting mad at me because my eyes were so shit too. He was like, you treat your body like this? I'm like, yeah.
Yeah. Apparently I do.
Anyway, it was weird. So, but yeah, so they have this like this really intense dinner, and he's gonna poison her, and that doesn't. And then after that, Paul is very like,
he just kind of resigns himself. We get a little montage of him writing and Buster reading the Misery novels and like catching up on the Misery novels and trying to get an idea of what they were all about.
I mean, like, talking about stretches here, like Buster pulling the one quote that Annie uses out of like.
Well, I like that he like remembers that quote. He like it catches his attention, but he doesn't know where he's heard it before, and it doesn't come till later. It's not until he's like reminded when he sees Annie later, and they kind of like we talked about. It all kind of comes back to him.
Yeah,
but he knows like there's still that seed in the back of his head where he knows he's heard those words strung together in that particular way because it's a weird turn of phrase about like only God will judge me or whatever. You know, like
it's a great scene. I'm not. Like, well, these are everything we always talk about. All good movies we ever talk about in our fucking podcast, or if we didn't have a podcast, I don't know if I'd ever be bringing these up.
Yeah.
But yeah. So one thing we do find out in this time, or around this is, Annie Wilkes was on trial and talking about this. Killing babies. It's in the scrapbook.
Paul's out again, and he sees her murder scrapbook. Basically,
yeah. I just also love.
It's not just babies though. She murdered a girl. Like there's if you look at all those all their scraps, there was like a girl she went to school with, her husband. You know, there's like a couple people. There's other people, and then she basically becomes what we used to call an angel of death, which was like a nurse who gets people sick so that she can save them, or sometimes just lets them die, or sometimes mercy kills people, whatever. But she was just, babies were dying under her watch. I did love the idea of a world where the hiring of a nurse gets in the paper. It's like Annie Wilkes gets the job at the head of the ICU, and it's like nobody gives a shit. You don't put that shit in the paper.
Her big accomplishments all were in the paper, and I also love how like in one of the desks like circles like. Yay, new baby. It's like, yay, new baby written on the, like, baby number 2.
Yeah.
One of them, too, which I found really funny on this rewatch, noticing, like, we're talking about Rob Reiner.
It's literally a scrapbook in the way that, like, you put stickers and stuff in a scrapbook. It's not just articles.
Yeah, it's brilliantly put together. I hope, like, that prop person, like, has that and kept that, and someone's like, this is Annie Wilkes' murder book. But I love that. We're talking about Rob Reiner, and he's basically just now known as like a political mouthpiece. He made her a Nixon campaign voter. Like a woman who worked for the Nixon campaign.
That's so funny.
Because there's a big
button in there, yeah.
No, it's like a pennant. It's like a sticker pennant.
Oh,
and it says, like, vote Nixon. And it's right there, and it's so funny because I'm like, of course.
Yeah, that's good stuff. That's real good. Yeah, I love the murder scrapbook.
Paul Sheldon. This is when
Also, we
he's
get
like,
to Paul practicing his knife moves, which I love. His like practicing like he's Travis Bickling.
yeah,
His practicing is getting his knife out.
yeah. And then she just like kind of like never comes home, so he's like, all right, fuck it. I guess I'll
Yeah,
go
he
to
ends up
bed.
falling asleep, and then when he wakes up,
The scariest, we already discussed it. Not the scariest scene in the movie, but it is notably one of the most scary scenes in the movie.
and definitely the most famous scene
It's
in
the
the
most
movie.
famous
What
scene. I
people
mean, this
remember
made
the movie for the most. I did want to talk about when she's talking about, because this is where she reveals that she knows he's been getting out, and the way that she says she knows is because her little penguin was knocked over, and it always, when he set it up, he didn't set it up right. It always faces due south, and I just wanted to say that's very me coded. If I walked into a room where all my knickknacks and toys are, and one's off, I would notice. Like, I remember Harrison tried to get away with hijacking like a Lego head off one of my little Lego men before, and I knew it. I knew. I was like, "You give me a jank Lego head, you take my good Lego head off this guy." He did. He had to give it up.
you coming in and be like, all right.
Or you ever like come in and you look at your DVDs and like
Oh
no one
my,
else would notice, but you can tell there's one DVD missing. There's just a little bit of space where there isn't usually a little bit of space,
oh
and you're
yeah,
like, "Where?" What? And it's usually just your wife took it downstairs or something. But you're like,
oh,
"Hey, what was there? What's missing? What was there?"
I'm familiar. I'm not saying I'm not one of those people because I am.
I'm just saying that might seem like a crazy person thing, but I don't think it is,
I
because
don't
I
think
am
it
that
is because
particular type of crazy also.
but her house is very like knickknack oriented, which like people that are knickknack oriented actually know where they set all that stuff up.
Yeah. There's usually, if you display things in that way, there's usually a reason that it's sitting the way it is and where it is. You've thought about that before, you know?
Hmm. Like I don't think I'd be like due south, but I'd be like, hey, shit to the right of me. That's why I'm pointing, and like they
I think it makes
fall.
sense.
They,
It was pointing south because penguins are at the South Pole. That makes sense to me.
okay. Hey, she says that. It's like, fuck. And then yeah, so she hobbles him and gives him a whole lesson of this is what they used. I'm going to, abbreviate it all. This is what they used to do to slaves when they run away. I'm not going to kill you because that's like throwing a Buick out because you got like an fender bender or something, or like
Yeah,
a Cadillac and a fender bender. Says something. He's like, oh, but you're still good to me if you can't get away.
yeah. And famously, of course, we have to say, because everybody knows, but in the book, she actually cuts his feet off.
Oh, is that
Yeah.
the this
But
looks so much
I
better.
think the hobbling to me is a little more brutal, and it's more original. Like, we've seen people's feet cut off before.
Yeah,
Mad
and
Max had
also,
happened by this
but
point and
also
shit.
she's not like, and her character's crazy. She's not like I'm sawing you away, and
Yeah.
I think that also paints Annie Wilkes's horror in a different light. Like, I don't think in a weird way, like this isn't a stupid way of saying, like Kathy Bates doesn't get her Oscar if there's a scene where she's hacking away at the feet.
No, probably not. Yeah, the way she does it, because the way it's shot, the monologue as she's doing it.
There,
I'll tell you what, the scariest part of the whole thing to me, after she hits the first ankle, which is the one they really show you,
mhm.
when she's walking over there, she's like almost done. Like the way she kind of like, oh, it just
She
makes my
likes it.
skin crawl. It's just so creepy.
She
Like,
likes
she's
it.
just incredible in the role. Um,
And she, cockly doodly doo.
you cockadoodie. That's what she yells at the guy when she's in
Cockadoodie.
town, because that's kind of where we're leading next. Is after the hobbling. Um, this is when Buster is kind of reminded of her. He's in town and he just sees her kind of like yell at somebody and go into the store, but you can tell he's just kind of hasn't thought about her. And then he starts to think about her, and then he starts to think about the quote he remembers and where he remembers it from. And he's like, oh, yeah, she went on trial for like a bunch of baby murders. Like,
And
it just doesn't seem like the kind of thing you would forget. If a
no,
person in my town only had like 50 people. My town was so small, I only needed one cop. I would know if one of the people famously went on trial for
murdered a
baby
bunch of babies.
murders.
Yeah, and he knows. Yeah, and we're already established he knows the Wilkes farm. Like because they take the helicopter over. Rob
He
Reiner
points
is the
it out. He
helicopter.
knows Annie, but he hasn't. Again, like she just does not, because she has kind of rescinded into this world of
She comes
misery
into
where all she
town.
does is live these misery books and
I
like.
like that she comes into town. She goes to probably that one general store where that's where Buster gets his information from. Because even the
Oh
guy
man!
before,
Speaking of face acting, we talked about James Caan earlier. When Buster, when he asked the guy if Annie has bought anything weird, and he's like, "No, unless you think paper's weird," and he says it's typing paper, and he's like, he doesn't. They hold on him, and he just is like, "Nope, everything's fine. Gotta
yeah,
go." He just like runs out of there, like,
yeah,
but like just
oh, Miss,
some excellent realization in his face. It's very subtle, but like
it's good.
it's
It's
really
good.
quite, like I said, it's quite good.
Like
The
and
the
like
the ancillary performances in this movie really
yeah,
steal it.
and the guy going, Mrs. Wilkes, something wrong, did she? You know, like that guy, as I'm
No,
saying,
everything's fine.
like clearly that woman just comes into town, gets her normal fucking shit,
Yeah, and
and then
she's, the way she presents herself would be very kind of nice and
hello.
cheery, and like
She reminds me of our librarian growing up, like in like elementary school. It's the look wise and niceness, and but
yeah.
generally off air, I will tell you a story that she said to one of the students where I went, "Oh, that one was just a fucking racist." Yeah, like
Oh, hey, we
this
all know Annie's racist against Italians.
Miss Past Miss I forget her name. I think Pavlock looked like Annie Wilkes. I mean, just blonde, and I'm sure she was fucking terrifying in her real life. She scared us sometimes in the library, but she's also really sweet. And yeah, no, I just don't want to say the things.
No,
So,
that's okay. You don't have
and
to
it's
say
not
the
my
slur.
story to tell.
Save it for
Uh,
off camera where we say all our slurs.
yeah,
Oh, we
that's
slur
what
it
it
up.
sounds like I'm gonna do, and I guess I'm not. So no, never mind. Um, but but yeah, so uh,
So Buster heads out to the farm,
yeah,
and Annie sees him coming, and she, before Paul can do anything or react, she's in there giving him some junk and throwing his ass down in the basement.
hmm
Um,
and things
when
are unraveling a
Buster's,
little bit for her.
hmm, what was
So
that?
things are unraveling a little bit
Yeah,
for
yeah, we're
her there.
definitely, well, yeah, we're almost there for that,
Yeah.
because we do have a moment here where Paul buys himself some more time, but Buster, he comes in, he's looking around. I like here that we know Annie not only has a lie ready to go, but it's also kind of a hint at what her final plan is, which is to like take the misery book that Paul writes and then pass it off as her own work, kill him and pass it off as her own
hmm
like tribute to
Like I
him.
wrote a misery book to that,
I
and
wrote
then she
I'm Misery's.
lives.
I was Paul's biggest fan. I love Misery. I wrote this book as a tribute to him to follow up to his beautiful Misery series or
And
whatever.
he died in my town.
Yeah,
You
yeah, he
know,
died
like
near my house. I just so tragic. Blah blah blah. But she has this whole. I love. There's a few times in the movie where they never really like specify, which actually is better. I hate in movies where they give somebody a really specific mental illness because they usually get it wrong and they fuck it up. So it's actually better that they leave it kind of vague of what exactly Annie's dealing with. But there's definitely some delusions of grandeur. Yeah,
hmm
there's definitely a manic depression element to it. So um yeah, the idea that that was her plan is so funny. Like the idea that's what she thought was gonna happen.
yeah, and so because that, you know, um, she hears the sheriff kind of coming down the road, and she takes Paul in his wheelchair, and she's like, not. She tries. He kind of fights back a little bit. She sticks him the needle. He passes
Yeah.
out, and she's like, "All right," and she just dumps him down to the basement. And her basement is very like I've seen houses like old houses like this, but it has like a trick door to it almost.
Yeah.
Um, the cop, Buster's like, all right, can I look around? No problem at all. And she, like you said, reveals the book and this. And Paul's kind of like waking up a little slowly, like, but
Well,
there's the
also Buster's not. He fucks up a little bit. He gets busted snooping too much.
mhm,
Like he can't play it off that he's not there to invest. He tips Annie off. He can't. She maybe would have thought you were there about something else, but like the way she finds you snooping, she knows. So when she goes off screen, we don't know what's happening. He finds the door, he opens it, he gets a glimpse of Paul Sheldon, and you get to see that moment where Paul has that like relief on his face, like I'm found, I'm saved, and then boom, dude's chest explodes like the Predator shot him.
It's for such a, like I said, it's too seeming for such the sweetest man in the world. You're just like,
well, also it's a turn. This movie turns hard in the third act. Like it gets really mean between this and the hobbling. The movie really takes a mean, and I would say even the fight between James Caan and Kathy Bates, all have like a level of kind of meanness and nastiness to them.
Someone has to tell his poor, horny old wife.
I'm glad you said that because I've thought that every time I watch this movie, I cannot think about how hard she is going to take it. Like, she is not, it's going to devastate her. And I think about that every time I watch this movie. Like, and you don't get like an epilogue with her or anything.
And I just know she sits there and is thinking, I told him not to investigate that case anymore. Like, just accept that Paul Sheldon was dead, and
just let it go, move on. Do the Tommy Lee Jones in No Country. Be like, you know what? This isn't my problem. Like, this is not my shit. I'm done with this.
But no, it's a great scene. It really is
incredible.
And like you said, you see the look on Paul's face, but it's so sad because he also goes back in, right? He doesn't wait.
He's almost out, and then he comes back. Yeah.
He doesn't wait, and that's where like. We've lost where Annie is in the house, and that's where.
Also, like he's probably worried if he waste time calling for backup. She'll do something to Paul, or she'll lose. You know what I mean? He doesn't, so he goes right back in.
He's not wrong in a sense because where we're leading to is Annie is about to tell Paul, "Well, we're doing a murder suicide." Because it's the only way our love.
Once you shoot the cop, somebody's gonna come looking for that cop. So she knows she's done. Time's running out. You know what I mean? Yeah. We're almost at the end here.
So it happens, and Paul does have like one last thing where he's like, no, we wrote this book. Like,
one last trick to play. One last.
If we do
buy himself some time.
Yeah, like if we do this, like let's get it. Let's have a romantic ending with each other.
Yeah, let me finish this book for us, and let's read it together.
Mm-hmm.
And then we'll do your murder suicide thing.
Yeah, and he stole lighter fluid.
Yeah, well, he's down in the basement. He sees some lighter fluid, so he tucks them down his pants.
And I like how Paul hides things like he's Tommy Pickles. Like, he's like, let me just put the screwdriver in my diaper.
Whoop! Right down the front.
But, so he does that.
Also, not a safe place, because Annie's checking that dick. There's no way that Annie Wilkes ain't checking that dick.
Yeah. Paul.
If you're on Twitter today, you may have seen they had an old CIA radio that was in a fake ball sack they would put people, that was like a fake pouch that looked like testicles, and they had a little radio, and it's because they knew that like if their spies got caught and stripped naked, that men would be hesitant to check the sack, and that was a place they could hide something, and they made a fake prosthetic ball sack. It was incredible.
Send that to me because I didn't see it. That sounds hysterical. So anyways, he's like, okay, and he's like, always need my lighter and my glass of scotch and whatever.
Right, well, he tells me, he's like, I finished, we need the champagne, the Dom Perignon. You gotta get me and he needs his cigarette and his, and one match to light it, because she knows all his traditions, and when he finishes the book, that's the process, and so she's like totally bought into it.
He likes expensive champagne.
She goes out to get the Dom Perignon, and while she's out, he throws down the manuscript, covers it in lighter fluid, gets the lighter, gets the match ready,
and he goes, "You're never gonna know how this thing's gonna end. It's on this last page." and they lights it goes out. They go at each other, goes at her eyes. She shoots him in the shoulder.
Well, yeah, I love that she goes to put out the fire, and he picks up
Oh yes, I missed a step.
which we've seen him
He's been
working on
out
because his shoulder, aside from his legs, his shoulder was also hurt. That's why his arm was in a sling. But we've seen him. I love that, like, he uses the typewriter to work out and strengthen that shoulder, and then that's his move, is to drop the fucking typewriter on her head when she comes over. But she's a bull. Annie's a bull. That doesn't stop Annie. So they have to have a tussle.
Like you said, they have a tussle. Like you said, it's mean, and really, it's not even a tussle. Like,
well, also all her like prudishness about language, like that whole joke finally pays off when she calls him a cocksucker, which is an incredible moment. Yeah. Like all her like cockadoodies and I made you feel oogie and her like baby talk. Then she just screams cocksucker at him, which is so good.
It's perfect. It's perfectly played. It's let out at the perfect moment. And I love
exactly. Like I said, a master of their craft. They knew exactly how long to wait and not to spoil it,
And I love its final. Mrs. final move is just, let me use my dead leg to trip you.
Yeah.
And yeah, she dies by falling temple to the typewriter.
Yeah. And then but then he has to finish her off with the misery door thing. Remember?
Oh, you're right. You're right.
She knocked out, but then we get the final horror movie jump scare where she comes back.
It's like the pig
also,
misery.
we missed the part where he is on top of her and jamming manuscript in her mouth.
You're right. You like this? See, that's when I'm like, oh, I think that's just James Caan not acting.
Yeah, well, like I said, that's the James Caan we know, the one that beats up ladies. That's why that's Sonny Corleone right there.
Like, oh, geez, I'm right. That the typewriter on the head did not take her out, but he goes for more, as he should. And so yeah, and then like I do like just left us to be like, okay, someone came looking within a day or so for Buster.
Yeah, I mean, somebody's gonna come look for Buster. He's the sheriff of that town. So.
Yeah. And we get it 18 months later,
which I don't think he would be walking yet in 18 months.
Yeah, it's a little suspect for how much trauma his legs were.
He would have nothing. He had gravel in there. Like,
well, you
know how many pins would be holding that shit together?
You've dealt with seeing probably people of that magnitude in your job before. That timeline, you would know the timeline better than anyone.
I mean, I'm not saying it couldn't happen. I'm just saying, whew, boy, that's a lot.
Especially just with like a walker. I mean, not a walker, a cane.
I mean, good for him,
Yeah, good for him.
But also the thing that it was both ankle, that's another thing. It wasn't just one, it was both,
and his legs were not healed up fully before he got,
and also like, she might have reset his bones and stuff, but he had compound fractures, which means shit was poking through the skin. He had, she didn't have like, she might have reset them and they were healing, but she didn't put like pins and stuff in there.
Yeah, when she's like,
I don't know. I'm just saying,
the bones moving.
God bless him, but goddamn, I think 18 months seems a little ambitious.
I mean, there's more a realistic thing where he went, they took him to a hospital and they're like, we're going to have to amputate both legs. They're
no doubt
infected.
You're losing these at the upper thigh, my guy. Sorry.
Yeah. You're going to be playing Lieutenant Dan in a couple of years.
Yeah.
But no, so he's sitting down with his agent, and they're just chatting, and his new book's out, and she's like, "You're gonna get she's like, you're gonna get a Putzler for this. It's that good."
Yeah, like you get the impression that he kind of rewrote the book that Annie finished, that Annie burned, but probably a little better, just having a second crack at it and kind of his life experience. And she does try to float the idea of like him writing a book about the shit with Annie, but of course he's like, I love his response. He's like, well, I think you were asking me to drudge up the worst time of my life, make a couple bucks. It's a great response from him. Although, like I said, I kind of have to admit, I love the idea in the book that like the version of misery that Annie helped him create ends up being the new legacy and like the better, because he does say in this, even in the movie, that like he learned something from Annie and that like, that like she changed him in a way that,
in the book,
it would have been interesting to see that played out. But
so in the book, he ends up using the book that he wrote with Annie Wilkes.
Yeah, he ends up releasing the Misery book.
Oh,
yeah,
no,
the one that they
don't,
write.
I don't like that ending.
I think it's interesting, the idea that like
I like that he's like,
that
I've
he
learned
wrote
from it.
that part of his trauma comes out and it's really popping, it's successful, and like grappling with like the horrible experience versus the success kind of born from it. I like the movie ending better. I just think that's an interesting thing for the story.
Sure.
Too.
I mean, yeah, I like that he acknowledges that in the movie ending. I'm just like, I've learned something. I think my writing's better for this and that. But no, I'm not ready to go there. And we get that confirmation by him seeing, and it's a good little period on the end of the movie.
He's got some PTSD he's got to work through still.
Seeing, he's like, I see her everywhere, and we see her walking to cut a slice of cake, holding up the knife, and then goes to the real woman. The real woman goes, "I'm your number one fan." He was like, "Oh, isn't that sweet?"
Great, it's good stuff. It's like I said. I mean, it's like no debating this one. It's obviously a classic. It holds up 100,000%. It's full of incredible performances and memorable side performances. It's just so good.
Like, I think if someone was really like today, especially really critical of this movie or this, I'd kind of be like, "You're just being a jerk.
You're squeezing the lemon." Yeah, there's nothing here. Like,
what more do you want out of a thriller of a woman capturing a man?
I'm also a big fan of Dolores Claiborne. I think that's another incredible Stephen King adaptation starring Kathy Bates.
I've never seen it.
So
never seen it.
You should make that part of your list. You should get on that one.
Well, we've covered quite a bit of we should cover a decent amount of Stephen King. So.
Yeah, another thing about the whole this is about my addiction and all that, and the snow represents cocaine or whatever dumb shit. I always get mad. Like, I get it, he was an addict and that was a tough time, but like, do we have to denigrate the era that gave me Maximum Overdrive? Like, that cocaine birthed that movie for me personally, specifically. It's mine.
Yeah, I mean, listen, man.
Cocaine and Stephen King had a little baby. They put Emilio in it and they handed it to me, and I said thank you.
And you said thank you, and then you made me watch that for like the 4th time in my life.
I'll make you watch it again. I'm gonna trap you in my home and make you watch it with me. That way you'll see the joy in my face.
I said I got it in that episode. I said, no, I get it. No, I get it.
That's not good enough.
It has a lot of Simpsons voices in it. I get it. It's like Godzilla.
Simpsons voices in it.
All right. But no, that's Misery. Absolute classic. I'm always glad.
What more can we say that hasn't been said?
We're gonna say is stay frightful, everyone. You know where to find us.
Welcome to Flyover State of Fear.